Return of the Jedi is the last film in the original Star Wars trilogy, and it sees all of the old faces return, as well as some new ones. Growing up, I always appreciated Return of the Jedi. The action scenes and dialogue scenes were very well handled, and some of the special effects were really good. But there was just something about it growing up that I couldn't really cling on to like I could with Empire Strikes Back and the original Star Wars film. Just something about it did not seem right. And after watching it again recently, those problems became very obvious. So I'm going to start off by talking about Jabba's palace. Now Jabba the Hutt himself actually still holds up to this day. I mean, there's something about him that does seem dated, but it still looks good. Now I'm going to say this, there are some kind of weird bits of dialogue scattered throughout these first couple of scenes. Especially one from C-3PO, where he basically just briefly talks about Han Solo being in the carbonite and that he's been in there for ages. I think it's as if the writers presume that the audience either are idiots or we never saw The Empire Strikes Back, which is like the weirdest thing, but you can tell that they're just, these first few scenes are just exposition and nothing else. Of Jabba's palace, including Lando in disguise and Boba Fett, are all really good. And there's also that little rat thing which does that horrible laugh. Yeah, I always hated that thing as a child. I mean, every time I'd play Lego Star Wars, I would always try and kill that little thing. Anyway, you guys know what happens next. Bounty Hunter comes in with C-3PO and R2-D2. He sells them to Jabba, frees Han Solo, and then it turns out that it's Leia. They have a little romantic thing together. Then Jabba comes in and ruins their moment. And then we get quite a sweet reunion between Chewbacca and Han Solo. It's just really nice. And however, we are then introduced to the Rancor. I never really took proper notice of any of the side characters or any creatures, but now that I do know it, the Rancor is pretty good. I mean, it still holds up to this day. Even though there are a couple of shots that do look a little bit dated, the stop motion is very, very well handled for the Rancor. We also get the great Sarlacc pit scene where we see that Luke is not the person he was back in A New Hope. He is now a full-blown Jedi badass. The only gripe I have with the scene, to be honest, is that there are some shots that look kind of crap. And the other thing, which pretty much every fanboy has a problem with, and so do I, is how Boba Fett's death is handled. Now, to be honest, I don't think the writers realised how big of a character they had on their hands, because they honestly didn't care. Because literally, Boba Fett is just gone, like that. Just gone. In like the worst way possible. He's just hit in the back on the jetpack and he flies into the Sarlacc pit and you don't see anything else of him. That's like the worst thing they could have done to one of the coolest characters. Even though we don't see him much in the other films, it would have been good to just see a little bit more of him, a bit more of him in action, which we saw a little bit of in The Empire Strikes Back, but nowhere as much as we wanted to. But just cutting him off like that is bollocks. It's honestly awful. Why? Now, there are some scenes, dialogue scenes in particular, that could have been handled a bit better. They could have put some more emotion behind it and some more, you know, more depth into the characters. Like, for example, two scenes in particular when Luke is talking to Leia about them being brother and sister, and also when Lando and Han meet for the first time since the events of Empire Strikes Back. Both of those scenes could have been handled way better, with a lot more emotion and anger put into those. But they're just kind of cut short and nothing really happens, and it's a bit uneventful. Whilst we're on the topic of emotional depth and characters who are just cut off, Yoda. Now, even though he was one of the best things about The Empire Strikes Back, he's in one scene in Return of the Jedi, and the way it's handled is pretty bad, especially for a good character like Yoda. His scene is only there so he can say that there is another Skywalker out there, which will eventually be Leia. But it's just handled so badly. I mean, there's a little bit of emotion, but people who might not have seen Empire Strikes Back might not get the importance of the character. So just having the conversation or having some of the shots linger for a little bit longer, maybe extending the scene by a couple of minutes, would have made it more poignant and a bit more meaningful. Now, to me, Endor is one of the most intriguing planets out of the whole Star Wars thing. I mean, so far in the series we'd already been introduced to a desert planet, an ice planet, and a planet where all the inhabitants live in the sky. And to finish it off, a woodlands planet where the entire place is just one big forest seems like a really good idea, and it is handled pretty well. I mean, you got that speeder chase, which is quite dated now, especially due to the fact of that blue screen projection thing, which is used quite a lot in this film, and it doesn't work as well as the original two films. Now, the one thing that I've never been keen on, even when I was a little child in this film, is the Ewoks. Now, there are two very valid reasons why I hate Ewoks. First of all, they actually have no point of being there. They are the most pointless characters ever put into the Star Wars universe. I mean, the fact that they're little bears, they don't speak English, yet they can braid a woman's hair perfectly, is a little bit strange. Also, the fact that, like, there is no point to them. Honest to God, there is no point to them. I think they were just there to sell toys and some crappy little straight-to-video films that no one ever watched. And the other reason I hate them is because apparently an Ewok throwing a stone at a stormtrooper can kill them. They're wearing helmets and armour, yet an Ewok can just tear them apart like paper. I don't get how that works. I mean, there are some things that work, like the two logs crushing the AT-AT, but nothing else works. Like, bow and arrows should not be able to pierce a stormtrooper's uniform, and the same for the stones smacking against the helmets. It should not kill them. It should just maybe knock them bandy for a bit. You know what I mean? It's just pointless. It makes that whole end fight on Endor utterly pointless. Also, adding on to the fact that there is more exposition, the scene where C-3PO, who has now been seen as this kind of golden god figure by the Ewoks, is making all these weird noises and basically just telling them these stories of this great hero, or basically just retelling the events of the first Star Wars film. Now, I know I might be panning this film at the moment, but it does have some good elements to it. You have the Emperor, who looks fierce, looks evil, and his companionship with Darth Vader in this film does feel a little, you know, Darth Vader's only doing this because he has to, not because he wants to, just because he has to. I think all the scenes where the Emperor is trying to force Luke to take Darth Vader's place is done so well, and the fact that it's none of that choreographed shit from the prequels. It's just pure relentless anger. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's just wailing at Darth Vader in this really angry and aggressive way that is just, it's just so well handled. We get a couple of little scenes here and there where it's kind of a little nod as well to The Empire Strikes Back, where Han Solo is covering Leia and then these two stormtroopers are behind them, and it's the role reversal of that "I love you, I know" scene, where instead Leia says "I know" and Han Solo says "I love you." It's just kind of a sweet little thing that they did. There's a lot of little nods to the previous two films despite that shitty exposition, but there are just some nice little nods here and there that do really work. We've also got the massive battle of the Death Star 2, I think it's called. I was going to say Mark 2 or Numero Dos, but honestly, it is one of the best space battles ever put to screen. I mean, it's even a little bit more impressive than the one in the first film. It's just so technically astounding, and also General Akbar. I mean, whatever the fuck that thing is, it's just, yeah, I don't know what that thing is, but that famous line, "It's a trap!" Just one of the funniest lines, even though it's not supposed to be, just one of the most unintentionally funny lines in a film I've ever seen. Anyway, that whole space fight scene is just handled so well. The battle on the ground is handled quite well also, even though the whole bullshit thing of the Ewoks, but I already talked about that. But the best scenes are the ones that take place in the Death Star between Luke, Darth Vader and the Emperor. It's just handled so well, and that amazing finale where Darth Vader finally becomes Anakin Skywalker again and throws the Emperor overboard is just so gratifying. Why George Lucas added the painful "no" onto Darth Vader in the special editions, I just don't know why. I'm so glad it's not on my Blu-ray of it, but it's just so pointless. Also, the way that the removal of Darth Vader's helmet is handled is just so well done. It's not melodramatic, just very little dialogue. It's handled beautifully, and also the scene, or like the little clip where Luke is at Darth Vader's funeral, is kind of sad actually, especially seeing the fact that he's the only one there. Even though there are quite a few flaws and things that do seem a bit pointless now, this film is the weakest in the original trilogy. I mean, it's still kind of enjoyable. There are some really iconic and memorable action set pieces, but those set pieces do feel as if they're there just for the point of entertainment, and the dialogue scenes do feel a bit not rushed, just they could have done a lot more with them. However, I still enjoy Return of the Jedi. It's still better than some of the prequels, and I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. I don't know, it's not perfect. Anyway guys, that is it. My Star Wars reviews are almost over. We just got one more to do, and that is The Force Awakens next month. I hope you guys are excited. I definitely am. I can't contain myself! So guys, remember to like my Facebook page, The Media Critic, like this video, comment below, and also subscribe if you want to see more awesome videos. See you guys!